Excellent, fantastic. Hammond, we're back again
We're
for
back.
another episode, and
Yes,
so really excited. I know we just discussed a few different ideas in terms of how we're going to break this concept down, and it's going to be really valuable for brand founders. And I guess this concept, I guess, probably is applicable to all businesses, really. Like whether it's an e-commerce business or whether it is a service business, a lead gen business, the same methods and the same structures probably have some kind of parallels overall. So we're going to be talking about profitability and how to, first things first, understand why profitability is so important, and then also give you all some really tangible and specific strategies to increase your profitability through what we have discussed here as this almost like holy triangle of profitability. So, Hammond, do you want to tell me from your perspective, from a profitability
yes,
perspective, why is it so
yes,
important? And I guess just unpack that a little bit.
of course. So yeah, so actually in e-commerce, I think it was like every person kind of showing like 20K, 50K, 100K a month, like, hey, asking yourself, are they actually profitable? Like, that's something that always I think about, like, what's the profit margins? And I think what they say, like sales, like sales vanity, profit sanity. It's like every time like thinking, hey, I need to kind of come back to earth and look at how much I'm actually, making a reality to open up profit. So in reality, in the business, what you should focus on is your net profit. And this is kind of, what you take, and you need to really be obsessive about it. But I see in general in e-commerce a focus on sales. Like I need to make sales. I need to like it's like the focus. I need to make like 10K, 20K, 50K. But I would rather do 50K with, let's say, 50% net than 100K with 10%. Or just the
Mm,
margins are much bigger. So you really look at it from a what you actually are making rather than anything else. So that's kind of my view on like why it's so important. It's because it's what you're taking, right? If your business is unprofitable, then you're always going to have to put more, and
mm,
it's going to be kind of, I'd say, draining you when you're looking to grow it. So it's really important to focus on profit so that you can grow your business, because otherwise it's going to be draining you. It's going to be pretty much taking money out of your pocket. So that's why
yeah.
I would say it's so critical.
Mm. And so just on that point, so do you think, and I'm very much in agreement with you there in terms of I'd rather have, less velocity or less volume and higher actual like profit units as opposed to, much more velocity and then like much less profit. So do you think that so say for example, a brand's, smaller, because like I'm just asking the question and wondering about like, let's just think, for example, I'm making $20,000 per month at the moment. Would it be realistic to say that my profit margins at say $20,000 a month or $50,000 a month should be the same as a percentage as I scale, or is there going to be, from your understanding, some creep in terms of like, hey, like it's going to reduce, I'm going to have more fixed costs? What do you think about that?
Yes. So in general, as you scale up, your margin is actually going to go down because you're getting more volume. So that's normal. Now, the ratio is what actually what would matter. So, for example, if you're scaling up and you're just to the point where you're just break even, we have a problem. So, if you're like at a higher scale and you're just like, I'm break even, and the moment we have like a little bit of shakiness, you're losing money, then that's a problem. You need to kind of dial back a little bit on the volume, not necessarily because you need to dial back on the volume. It's probably that you have some cost that's a little bit kind of I'll say, draining you, and you can't maintain it if it's going to be negative because it's a higher leverage. So, it's most of the time like in terms of like targets, it's mostly what is the volume that you're running at, is it draining you or not, and is it optimized or not? So it's pretty much that side. Now, I look at it most of the time. If you're running between 0 and I would say 10, 20K, it is normal to have a lot of fluctuation in your margins. So we aim always for like volume so that we can optimize better. But if you're running at 100K and you have the same problems at a store that's launching, then we have like it's more of a challenge there, and you need to decrease and kind of adjust. So it's really on like how much data, and I would say like how much volume do we have. If it's really low, then that's okay. We can push a little bit of volume higher so that we can optimize faster. But if you're already high and you just, you've been there for a while and you're not making more money, then probably something is wrong and you need to start kind of decreasing and optimizing a little bit better your back end. So that's kind of my
Mm.
focus. And I'm actually curious about your view on it, like in terms of let's say, would you look at maintaining something for a while, like let's say that just break even a little bit of profit, or you just cut down and just kind of, make it more profitable, then scale up?
Well, I guess similar to what you mentioned there, I guess it depends on a couple of factors. Where you are, I guess, in the life cycle of the business, and I think there's a lot to be said around what you mentioned there in terms of like 0 to 20K a month, because naturally there are a lot of fluctuations in that stage. You're testing creatives, you're testing like which product is your hero product, how you're going to display that product, landing page changes, email conversion, back end performance. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that initial stage. But I think in that stage, you kind of need to break a little bit out of maybe the scarcity and fear-based mindset of like, I don't want to spend too much and I need to be, profitable at, say, for example, like $20 a day in ads, $30 a day in ads. And it's like, you really need to push a little bit harder. I always use the example in the community whenever I do any form of like coaching on this subject. And so like a lot of the times what I find is people will jump on and they start like running ads and testing budgets at like $20, $50 a day. And so that's not a problem at all. You can do that, but you have to expect that the time frame that you're going to collect data is going to be a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot more painful almost, because you're like, oh, like when am I going to start seeing sales? Like when am I going to start seeing any form of signals? And so it stretches out, and it actually makes it, in my opinion, more frustrating and a little bit more kind of psychologically difficult to manage and deal with. And so I would always say for myself, when I'm like testing anything new, I'm like, let's, do maybe 3x the price of the product, spend $150 a day over a 6 or 7 day window, and get much more data way quicker to then determine like, is it profitable? Where's the problem? Like, where's the issue? Where do I need to fix? And then so from that point, assuming, say, for example, because I think this is a really, 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 really strong conversation, assuming that you're above that, say, for example, like $20,000 per month level, and then your profitability is like shaky or up and down, I would kind of say fixing the problem, and assuming you're like $30,000 a month, $40,000 a month, and you're not seeing any form of like improvements. And similar to what you mentioned, you're constantly in this like fight for break even. And it's like, I'm just circulating money through the washing machine. It can be very debilitating, and it can really like mess with your
Very
mindset
challenging.
for
Yeah.
business. And you're
Making
like,
money.
I'm making all this money, but I'm putting all this money back in again. I'm making all this money.
That's right.
So
And,
that's
and I
that's
and
a
I
little
think
bit of
there's
my
also
thoughts
like
on it.
a loss, like there's like a almost like you don't believe the business anymore when you're seeing 30K. I'm like, hey,
Correct.
I'm making 30K, I'm not seeing any profit. And it's like, hey, is it actually working? Is like this e-commerce is like, and most of the time I think entrepreneurs, they have this tendency, or we have this tendency of, we think about like it's going to be permanent, whatever we have right now. It might be a good
Correct.
situation, but it's a permanent situation. Like it's like kind of a default, everything is going to be like this forever. And I'm never going to make a profit, or I'm always going to be at loss. Like all, like it's
The
kind of a,
interesting thing is we think both the good things and the bad things are going to be permanent, right? If
yes.
something's really good, it's like, this is amazing. It's going to be like this forever. If something's really bad, it's like, I can never see myself living in an environment when things
There
are
is
not
no
bad.
intermediate. It's
Yeah.
like you're gonna hit this, and it's just the same thing every single time. It's a big problem. I think it's like whenever you're in a good situation, like, hey, this is gonna be like, you're gonna start taking more risk. While normally you should not. Sometimes like, hey, I'm
Correct.
making, let's say, 50K a month in profit, and then you take that amount and you're kind of already multiplying it by 12. Like, hey, I'm making this a full year right now, but in reality, you need to do the
Correct.
same work next month, and or even look at growing. So it's really like, I think this permanent like feel is very dangerous. I would say overall, it's like
Yeah.
that you forget that you're an entrepreneur. You're coming back to like, I'm actually in a job. Like I'm gonna get receive this payout every single time, and it's gonna be the same, right? So I think that's a problem. And even I think in the like any business sales like outside department, they always have that feeling of, hey, we're gonna make the same amount, right? The moment they get to a
Yeah.
level, like, hey, we're gonna keep it, but you need to keep the pace. Like there are some ingredients, and I would say
Correct.
in e-commerce, same thing. If you're optimizing your business and you're at that, I would say 20, 30K mark, and you're making profit or you break even, it's not permanent either way. You need to fix things and rely on the data to make the decisions and grow your business. So it's not, either you grow or you stagnate,
Mm.
or kind of lose momentum. So it's really, you need to focus on growing all the time. And I think that's the missing part. Do
Yeah.
you agree on that kind of like mindset of growing all the time, versus just
Yeah.
kind of stabilizing situation?
I think definitely. And it was really interesting because when I was at the event recently with Patrick and some of those other CEOs, it was a really interesting situation where one of the guys in the room, and he had a transport and logistics company. And so he was discussing and sharing through like the COVID period. Obviously, the prices of containers went from like, I don't know, depending which size of container, depending who's talking or which supplier was sending it, somewhere around like maybe 1,000 to 3,000 up to like $30,000 per container to ship it. So ridiculous amounts of increases in terms of the units. And so his company went from like $40 million a year to like $120 million a year. And then they did $130 million a year the next year. And so what they started doing is they thought that, well, this is us. We are doing this. And they kind of completely removed the economic factors of COVID and everything happening. And then like the next year afterwards, I think it was 2021 or 2022, was like 60 million. And so they dropped, like $60 million of like annual revenues simply because they made projections based on this like false assumption of like, well, COVID's inflated this situation. We're making all this profit. Let's keep growing. So I think I know Alex talks about this a lot, Alex Hormozy, in terms of most of the time there is either like luck or some like good market conditions that are behind you, and you think like, this is me and I've done all the work and I'm fantastic. It's like, stop
Yes.
taking so much credit.
Yeah, I think overall it's like you like maintaining the pace and kind of making sure that you have all the ingredients. It's almost like what you should do all the time.
Yeah.
What I was thinking about, for example, if someone is making, let's say, 10 a profit a month, should they reinvest? Like, what is a good moment that you feel like they should start kind of reinvesting back the profit, and or just to kind of maintain the pace, or they should, let's say, kind of maintain. So what do you think in terms of like, should we, let's say I'm making 10K profit a month or I'm making 5K amount, should I try to take a little bit more risk to get to that like
Mm.
that next level, or I can kind of maintain a little bit, kind of build some cash flow? So what would you kind of
Yeah.
advise in terms of that situation particularly?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think always it's great to determine like what the goal is, because different companies, like say for example, your goal is to have a side hustle business that pays you $10,000 a month in profit. You might reach that, and then you might be like, well, I've made it. Right. And so it's like that might be the completion of your target, the completion of your goal. You've subsidized some of your family costs, and you're like, things are great, things are fantastic. I make $50,000 revenues and I keep $10,000 profit, and I have a little bit of extra cash in the business to circulate. That might be everything that you ever wanted. And so that's okay. And so if your goal is then to, do the opposite and scale the business massively, I just think that taking money out of the company and putting it into any other things, such as like spending it on stuff like, nicer clothes or like some, things around your home, it's a waste. Like it really is. Like any money that's not being spent back into the machine that's turning $1 into $4 every single month compounding, you're taking that money and you're putting it into, I don't know, a pair of like Gucci loafers or like a nice sweater or like, new blankets for your bed. It's like that money goes from like a 4x multiple every month to zero immediately.
You're-
the,
Yes,
the,
actually, it's
the
actually,
only the only
yeah, sorry,
caveat
go
I think to that, the only thing that I think is probably debilitating, and the pumpkin plan, and the pumpkin plan, he talks about it. Michael Malowitz or something. He's Michalowicz. Michael Michalowicz talks about it, and he also has the book Profit First, whereby getting into the habit of actually paying yourself as an entrepreneur is really beneficial, simply from the perspective of like, this business pays me and I don't work as a slave for my company. And so I think
ahead.
that's probably the only thing there. Number one, like establishing what the goal is, and then being like, cool, like what do I need for lifestyle? Can I work in my job, or can I keep my expenses around the house lean as possible, and maybe have some like targets that you work in? Like, I've hit my first 100,000 and I've made $20,000 a month for the last 3 months. Let's maybe reward myself for a weekend away or do something, but knowing that the highest ROI and that money is going to keep coming from being in your business and actually keeping that money circulating into your business and growing. I think that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually it's a great book, Profit First. Actually, I read it. It was a great book in terms of organizing everything and kind of thinking about like the profit particularly. My view on this is like right now when you're running a business, you need to look at anything that's draining you. And I think Alex Becker actually talked about this like a little bit in terms of growing his business, which he built like a massive, like
Yeah.
I'd say software company, the hires like that we use for tracking. But pretty much what he mentioned that you're very dangerous if you take all your money and you put it back in the business. You're going to be growing, and your competition is going to be afraid of this. Like they're going to be like
Right.
really scared. Like this person is pretty much taking all the resources and keeping growing, and us we need like to pay for things, right? So we're kind of like we have more liability. And I think when you're launching your business initially, you don't realize this, but you're actually very dangerous because other companies, they have like employees and they have things, and you're just putting money in the ads, everything you have, and you actually don't expect returns. So you're I would say, dangerous in the market. The problem is the moment you start growing, you start getting like you're kind of afraid because you're making money. And like, hey, I'm not sure. Should I put it here or should you start kind of thinking maybe I can use a little bit of the money, but you're just becoming more and more, I would say, kind of a soft in the market.
Yep.
And if you're competing with a person that cut everything and they put all the money in the business, they're gonna pace like much faster. And you're gonna be like, hey, what's happening? Why their ads? Why they have so many ads? Why they have so many things? And I think like this view on reinvesting is always just kind of making you more dangerous in the business, particularly.
Mm,
And it's coming back to that initial phase. When you're launching, you're very dangerous because you're putting all your money in the ads. Another business might not test everything you're testing. Another business might be kind of afraid of doing things, and you're coming in and you're actually coming with new, fresh ideas. So I think
yeah.
just put you in a very, very nice spot to get your first 10,000 in sales, while a business would take them probably like years if they would just stagnate and not do those risks. So it's really
Right.
fascinating, I would say, like the concept itself in terms of risk and going more aggressively. Now, we're going to talk
Mhm.
about profit maybe a little bit more. Actually, how can you hold on to more profit, right? How can I really build more leverage? So, what are, let's say, the component that you think that we can kind of look at in terms of like increasing our profit?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think for an e-commerce business, like specifically, like the main mechanisms or the main drivers that contribute the most to profit is definitely like your conversion rate on your actual store and being like, okay, so how many visitors convert? Because that fundamentally changes profitability. Obviously, you've got every bit of your ad costs, whether you're measuring CPCs or whether you're measuring whatever your main measurement is, but your advertising or traffic costs, whether it's a CPM or a CPC, like that dictates quite substantially like the overall profitability. And then for myself, I think that your average order value or what that kind of value is of what people pay you on every single order, I think those are the three main contributors that drive the most profit equally up or down. Like if one of those three are out of KPI, whatever KPI is for your business, I think you're really in some trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually I do agree 100% on this. So when I'm looking at any store and I just like in terms of say just media buying, looking at the ads, I look at the three things. So I look at the price because that's how much they're converting per like per person coming in the store. Like that's the
Yeah.
conversion value. The conversion rate. How many people? If I was like, let's say I think about it like a just a regular store. I have 10 people coming in, how many people are actually going and buying? That's your conversion rate technically. And how many
Right.
things they bought, that's the AOV, like that's kind of the value. And looking at overall optimizing these two elements, you can really take your profit to the next level just by focusing
Mm,
on this is my conversion rate and this is how much they're paying me. And I can kind of control the two because you can control your
yeah.
price. You can increase the price, you can adjust your price, you can adjust your offer and your conversion rate, you can optimize your landing page. So you actually have the control on how people would see your offer, which is your conversion rate, and how they can like what's actually the amount that you're charging for that transaction. So those two, most of the time, they're very much like ignored when you're looking at an ad because you're looking at the platform that you're using, and we can talk about like different platform, but it's really you're looking at the ads CPC too much, while you have also those two elements that do play a role, and then the back end. Because I've seen cases,
Mm,
I don't know if you're exposed to this in the past, where a person would come in like, hey, we're looking at too much at the ad account, like the too much like this is like the ad account, it just feels like the CPC is good, I'm not able to move, and I'm like, your conversion rate's like 1% and you have like a $50 price tag. So we should have a higher conversion rate first before even
mm,
looking at the ad. And I try to look at this from like when you put in some money, it enters kind of like a like your funnel. Then you need to look at the output, but also what happened to that money in the meantime. Like what's kind of the like the all the trajectory and everything that happened before it's come back to you that you can put it in the ad account again. If you look at
mm,
that, you're gonna see that there is two touch points that can just get you much more leverage. One of them is what they see when they land on the page, but the second is the
yeah.
pricing. Right? It's really looking at that element because you can increase it and then you just make more money, correct? Do you feel
Right.
like that part is ignored in like in the funnel overall?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think one challenge that a lot of people have when looking because you and I can say like, all right, improve your traffic costs, increase your conversion rate, increase your average order value, but each of those three are like quite powerful in and of themselves. And so I also think that there are like different stages whereby you need to focus more on one than the other one, right? And so like say for example, you have really poor, for example, like traffic costs, and you're sitting on your site and you're trying to like optimize your conversion rate, but your traffic costs are very expensive and you're driving like, extremely expensive like traffic to the site, it kind of doesn't make sense. So I'd love to maybe break down a little bit the focus in terms of like where would we start in this triangle? Like let's start on X, and then how do we move through the triangle to kind of like, because I see it kind of as it's definitely a cyclical motion, like it's a flywheel almost once you get going, but you also do need to kind of work at that triangle from like step one, step two, step
Yes.
three to a certain degree. So let's maybe unpack that a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. So for example, if we were to start, we need to look at first like what's the start point? It's the platform that you're using. Let's say
Mm,
Meta or Google. Depending on that's kind of if I was looking at always like what am I getting? Your website, like that's not your start point. Obviously, you need a website, but we need to look at like where are these people coming from? And they're coming from a platform, right? So I
yeah.
think about it that that's a first level. So are we running Google or are we running Meta? And based on that decision, then we start looking at, okay, what are the ingredients that I need for this platform? And you can start kind of doing your ads, and then we run the ad. Now, once you do that, we're going to start looking at the cost per click or kind of how much are you paying for a person to look at your offer. From there, you can start kind of looking at kind of following the structure. So my view on it
Mm,
is we start with the ad or the platform, and then you move to the
absolutely.
store, and then you optimize your back end, kind of the average order value and your emails and things like that. Now, platform wise, like Meta versus Google, I know that we kind of we talked about this a little bit in the past in terms of what platform to start with. In my opinion, Meta is good for volume in terms of just like you creating something that's new, people never heard about it. It's kind of you're not just relying on search, so you're looking at exploring, I would say, a bigger audience and kind of bringing new users
Yep.
to that I would say niche, or kind of making like more of kind of a it's like always like a I think of Meta as kind of a discovery platform so that you can kind of bring people to something new versus Google where they're searching. It's like you can't really do that. Like I would say to a certain level, you can retarget, but most of the time with ecom, you're going to rely on shopping and or search, and those two. It's kind of
Mm,
there's a specific volume. So if you can't really tap into more volume unless you bring Meta in the equation. So do you think that,
correct.
that's the same thing in terms of platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from what I find is that most brands, depending on unless they're very like, which an e-commerce brand should never really be. It's kind of the reason that you start an e-commerce brand. But for some weird reason, say for example, you were localized in a little area, maybe then Google would be more appropriate. But I think for the most part, like starting on Meta and getting that kind of like push focused marketing where you're pushing your product in front of people that have no idea who you are, and it's like, let's discover this new product that I've not seen. And then also, if you look at it just statistically, like Meta has such tremendous kind of like overreach in terms of the most users on the platform. Like it's definitely the oldest, it's been around for the longest. It's like the mothership. And so starting at that level in terms of being like, let's understand this platform and really use it well. I think most businesses generally start with Meta advertising and then we'll, unless they're localized kind of retail businesses or something, most will start with like a Meta advertising. I completely agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Course, yeah, it's I believe the same. Like when you're looking at Meta, you have that, I would say, also like that dynamic. They're kind of like it's like because it's a social platform, you can kind of
Mm,
bring in something and use emotion more than Google. I think that's also
correct.
another element of some of your like options to convert a person. It's almost like when I think about an offer or any store or anything we're doing, it's like tomorrow you're gonna meet those people, which is your avatar, and you need to convert them. What is the best format to talk to them? If it's Google,
Mm,
it's like a little bit, I would say, like unless it's YouTube, it's like a little bit, I would say, cold versus if I was coming in and I would say cold here, it's not the traffic itself is warm, it's just like the approach itself versus Meta,
mm,
where you're actually talking to them and showing them more. It's like it feels like you're more kind of in the social environment and they're trying to give you a chance. Where Google,
mm,
they either searching and or they have like a good idea, like a very much like they're looking at you and your competition versus Meta,
mm,
they don't look at the competition. Like at that level, they're just looking at you. So they're giving you, I would say, the full attention which is really valuable for businesses. I really believe that. And I know that Google is a great platform. I've seen actually people launching on it and getting great results. Like if you have a business that's a little bit more, I would say that kind of a like it's much easier to position. It's like people would understand what it is, and you have a specific audience,
mm,
and or it's a very expensive product, so they actually would
mm,
search a lot before making a decision. Google might be a great platform, specifically if the volume of search is already high. Then you kind of like a it's an easy one because you have a high search
yeah.
volume and you can kind of educate your audience and position yourself. So that's great for Google, but otherwise Meta, you're getting more chance. You're getting that, it's like tomorrow we go to a room and you have that big audience and you have a chance to bring in like your story and talk and kind of convert. So it's really
Yeah.
amazing platform, in my opinion, the way that
Mm.
we can do things, right?
Yeah. And so let's maybe break down a little bit the I guess the how to's. So let's say, for example, I'm in a situation, I'm starting in this first like profit center, optimization factor. I'm looking at my traffic costs are expensive, and I'm like, okay, I want to start at stage one and I want to fix this problem because right now it's way too expensive. I'm not, driving good traffic. I don't have enough volume. The other metrics in terms of conversion rate and average order value are all out of whack. But I would know that I need to start with the traffic. So what are some of the drivers or what are some of the things that you feel like, look, let's start here first to start to
Yes.
improve like traffic costs?
Yes, so I'm gonna just like this. This is how I diagnose things because in general we need some like benchmarks or something that you can look at like, hey, this is bad and this is good because that's most of the time the
Correct.
problem. Someone would look at an ad account like, hey, is it good? Is it bad? Is it actually the case? Like
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like they're looking at it, like they're kind of hesitating, right? So how I look at it is in terms of e-commerce particularly, and I'm talking here about Australian dollar in terms of currency. If you're above $2 cost per click, probably you should look at your ads. Like that's probably like you're paying a little bit of premium. So that's something we can
Mm,
kind of start looking at your ads. Now, if you're paying $5 and $10 cost per click, we should look at your ads. Like that's kind of like you're paying a premium and it's very expensive. And think about this. Like you're paying $5 per person to come to your ad. It's like very much similar to if you're paying like a lead $1,000 or something like it doesn't make sense. Like
mm,
it's just
mm.
very, very high. And I would say that's kind of like put the direction into the ads. Like you have a problem, ad account, if your CPC is very high. So that's the first metric I'll look at, particularly if it's above two. And you can put it like around two, that's all right. Like we can kind of move a little bit to the funnel and look at the conversion rate. But if it's really $4 or $5, that's very hard that you just to maintain. Like think about this. You
Yeah.
pay $5 for a person to look at your store. And your conversion rate in general, the conversion rate are between 1 and let's say 10%. So you're kind
Mm.
of already not starting on the kind of right structure. So I would really
The
look at it from
viability
that
just,
perspective.
yeah, it goes down so quickly. So what you're saying is essentially, in terms of that CPC factor, if we really focus in on that, like $2 for a CPC overall, like that's probably the highest that
Acceptable.
you'd want to be. Like it's acceptable. Below $2, we're obviously starting to get better and better and better, and we're getting more and more and more efficient traffic. So in terms of like, let's say for example, I'm at like $3 in terms of my CPC. What measures would I take or what things would I do to start to kind of like get that down below into like an acceptable range?
Yes. So obviously, again, just to really be clear on this, the CPC is not the only thing I would look at. So it's really, I'm looking at
Of course.
also the profitability. So if you're having $3 cost per click and you're profitable, good. So it's no problem. Scale
Mm,
your ad spend. And so I'm not
mm,
necessarily saying that, hey, we need to, it's either two or we pause. Because I've seen people coming in like profitable, like a $3 CPC. I'm like, hey, maybe I should pause the ads. Like, no, you're profitable. ROAS would always win. Like
correct.
I don't care about the CPC if the ROAS is 10, right? Probably that you're going to be scaling and that's all good. So that's my view first on that element, just to be clear on that. Now, in terms of the, let's say my CPC is $3 and I'm having trouble being profitable. So it's really challenging. I'm not getting sales and I'm having we're in the optimization phase. I would start looking at the creatives, particularly the scroll stopper. Like if I was really looking at something in an ad and I would put my time, and I think even Alex Hormozi mentioned this, like in terms of his like optimization, in terms of ads, he put in like he's like saying that he's like putting 90% of his time in the scroll stopper or in the
Mm,
leading 5 seconds in terms of a video. That's like
mm,
90% of the effort. Now, I'm looking at it also from just what I've seen in every ad account that I looked at in the last 10 years. The average video play time is about 4 to 5 seconds. So
yep.
you're kind of by default thinking, what should I focus on in terms of like next to get my CPC down? Maybe I should just focus on the first 5 seconds of my content. So I'm very like kind of like positioning things. We need to focus on that first. Now, if you're running a static, that's all right. You can test different statics. Like by all means, you can do that. I'm just looking at more of the video because I know the videos are mostly what's
Correct.
scaled in Meta. So that's going to be the first thing you should look at. I have $3. Go and do 10 new variations of the best performer you have like, right away and use the first leading 5 second. Do that, but we need to look at volume. So don't just do like one and like, hey, I did one, it didn't work. That's it. Do 10, 20 a
Mm,
week, 30 a week. Push yourself to the limit where you're like, hey, I have so many scroll stopper that Meta is they're gonna find something. It's like volume would really offset that kind of a, I would say, learning, and you're gonna get
mm,
quickly some results. So it's really about how many creatives, and that's a hard work. Like I've talked to so many people in this space, and in Ecom Capital, we have access to kind of different tiers, and we see people that are starting out. And the moment we mention, hey, this is like the number of creatives you need to do, then they're kind of discovering it. It's like, hey, really? I was not aware of this, right? Now, I'm actually going to say that we're still not even saying like the number that I would really ideally push. Like I'm talking, we need to double whatever number I say and or
Mm.
triple if you want to get results faster because you want speed and speed is only going to be volume. So whatever number you have, let's say I recommended 50 and you did 50 and you're not getting results, do 100, do
Yeah.
200 creatives. I would
Yeah.
be more impressed if I was to go on a call and a person telling me, hey, Hamen, my CPC didn't go down and I did like 1,000 creatives.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Like there is probably meta right now. So right. So like I'll be off
Mm.
like completely, but I don't think I've never seen something like this. Like never.
No.
Someone would tell me
No.
I did 1,000 creative, 1,000 variation of scroll stopper, and I took like my CPC didn't move. It's just impossible. Like it just doesn't exist
Yeah.
in the market.
I think it's such an interesting kind of like conversation to have because I think people underestimate so much like just the actual amount of work that needs to be put into one particular thing to get that movement. And I think especially in that early stage founder perspective, um, people kind of like accept that things are okay. My creatives are okay. It's not that bad. And so then they kind of like move on to something else in the funnel rather than focusing on that one thing. Because I think you and I can both agree that like if you, and not even if, but when you actually have a strong piece of creative that is absolutely cracking like every other metric in the whole funnel, as if by like lightning improves, and so
Yes.
the power and the force of being able to do what you just mentioned and actually be like, right, so I'm going to research through every single creative library. I'm going to look at every competitor. I'm going to look at different niches and different verticals because, like, most of the time, I get so much inspiration from competitors and brands and companies that are like an insurance company or like a company that sells like burgers and they advertise different burgers or like a car sales company and the way that they advertise and do certain things and like that's really interesting. I wonder if I could apply that same kind of like hook. I wonder if I could use that strategy. I wonder if I could use this that sells like bikinis or underwear into this company that has nothing to do with it. And I think doing that, especially in respect to creatives, because most of the time people aren't very good at creatives, just straight up. And so they go to Canva or they get some random like Fiverr UGC creators, or they go onto any of these platforms, the creator flows like that of the market. They get 4 or 5 different creatives. They throw them into the ad campaign. They go, our creatives aren't working. Must
Yeah.
mean my product stinks and I don't know what to do. Please help. And it's like, you just haven't tested anywhere near enough. Let's talk about this for a second because I'd like to also maybe just for a moment unpack how to actually test these creatives. Because let's just hypothetically say one of the listeners right now went out into the market and they're like, great, fantastic. I'm going to take this advice and I'm actually going to test those creatives. And I'm going to build all the creatives. And let's say, for example, they've listened to this episode and they, in 2 weeks' time, they've got a massive war chest of 300 creative assets, right? And they've got a budget of $100, $200 a day. How does one go about testing those creative assets to see what's good, what's not?
Yes. So yeah, also say first that's gonna be like if you do this, then I'm probably gonna tell you, hey, you're gonna get your CPC down. Like that's kind of you put in this first. You're looking because sometimes someone would have a problem, like they have a problem in the CPC, and they're telling me like talking about the website, they want to work on that. I'm like, hey, we're looking at a different problem here. So you're really looking at the right, let's say, like solution there. That's what we should focus on. Now, in terms of the testing part in Meta, it's gonna be based on how I would structure like you can structure things differently. So let's say you're doing volume and you want to test quickly. Then the best thing, in my opinion, just testing creatives. You're either gonna be using meta optimization in terms of spend, so kind of
Mm,
using flexible ads, or using, I would say, an A plus campaign, which is pretty much telling Meta, I'll put in the creatives and I'll let you optimize the budget. So that's one way. Or you run an ABO setup where you're actually individually putting in the budget for each
yes.
creative. Both are good structures. So I'm not saying like one is better than the other. But if you're, I would say, low on budget, probably you want to do the ABO because you can control the budget and also you can, I would say, test with kind of more information that you put in every creative. Because if you have $100 or 50, let's say, and you're putting 10 creatives in a CBO or an A plus campaign, your money is going to be distributed by Meta, but you didn't give them a lot of money. They're going to just put in a lot of money, like a little bit of money in one ad, and you're not going to see the result for the others. And I've seen this many times. They're looking at a campaign and they see that the budget was not distributed evenly, and they have
Mm,
some creatives that are just not used. And I think this is actually happening even at scale. But at scale, you at least get like I would say more information on the top winners versus you don't see like for a lower scale, you don't get anything. There's no signals. You just spend a little bit here and that's it. So an ABO setup would kind of offset that risk because you can put individual budget in every creatives. And this is why I like to test with it with well, let's say when I'm a lower budget, because I can segment and I can put here 50. And then if it's not working, I can kind of pause it. And I can also control I'm giving this creative a chance rather than Meta is giving it a chance. And I know that Meta sometimes they have really an advanced algorithm, but they got like a little bit of impressions, they made a decision and they're done. And I want to like maybe
Mm,
look at maybe a bigger audience. So that's going to be my recommendation. It's kind of using an ABO setup if you're on a lower budget and doing, let's say you have $100 and you want to run 10 creatives a day, then just do $10 per ad and just do it like one ad set, one ad set, and one ad. And you can name it creative one, creative two, creative three, run them.
mm,
And what I would look at here is the impressions. Let's say you look at 1,000 impressions. What's your cost per click if that was the element that you're looking to optimize for? Or you can also look at how many, I would say, like link clicks you got and kind of optimize based on that. So you can either use like the number of clicks or the number of impressions to make a decision. And you need to have like a
mm,
fixed metric that you use that you can kind of compare your variables, like your let's say creatives. So that's going to be my
mm.
view in terms of the testing for the ABO or CBO. But I think you agree on like if you're on a lower budget and you put in like 50 or $20 and you run a CBO or an A plus campaign with like 20 creatives, the
Yeah.
distribution of budget meta, we've seen this so many times in so many
Yeah.
different ad accounts. They're not going to optimize it properly.
Yeah, and I think it's very inefficient use of like a campaign structure like that, like running an A+ campaign and then putting, $100 a day into it with like 30, 40 creatives. I think from what I've found is that those A+ campaigns, they actually perform really well at higher budgets when you run them with that structure. Like say, for example, you've got 500, $1,000 a day, and then you load 20 or 40, 30 creatives into it, and then you do that same strategy. It's got enough kind of like oxygen and breathing room to feed those creatives and give you a better indication of like what's working, what's not. And if it's not, and it's restricted to maybe $100 a day, you're just going to get this massive pool where all your budget goes into the top one and the rest of the creatives remain untested. And then you start making decisions on like, I guess this is a winning one. And it's like, well, is it really, or did it just not get enough budget? So completely agree with that. Yeah.
Yes, I think the A plus campaign is actually like the just for a person testing right now. I believe it's a great setup. Like it's really
Mm,
scalable. It's for
mm,
high budget. I would say almost all the time because it require like I would say when I say high budget, I don't necessarily mean 1,000. I just mean like above 20. Yeah. Because I've seen cases where you look at like an A plus campaign, you're putting 20. I'm like, hey, 20 and 20 creatives. That's going to be very like challenging to
yeah.
even maintain. But
Sure.
what I'm looking at here, I would say a plus campaign, you're relying on Meta AI, and they're very good at
Yeah.
finding, let's say, the best creative in the audience and the avatar. So they know how to do that. But if you're not, as you mentioned, giving them enough, like let's say, oxygen, they're not going to find that, and you're going to have like a campaign that's draining, I would say, resources because they're not able to kind of optimize, and you're not willing to wait until they do that. So it's like we're kind of starting on a
Correct.
loss scenario. So that's going to be
Correct. Yeah.
the challenging. That's why ABO is, I think, good for someone that wants structure and particularly, I think about media buying is like you're coming into like a sport and you have different ways to play the game, right? And if you don't know how to, let's say, particularly master something like quickly, you'd rather like start like I would say with like a specific structure that's easier that you can kind of learn from and then grow into a professional. So it's like
Mm,
you want to start your career, I would say, yeah, with an ABO, it's like you can control the budget, you can do things like more. It's like easier for you to see and you can grow
correct.
gradually to a setup where it's like you put more budget and you can trust Meta. So it's really
Yeah.
like I would say also like for people that are learning, it might be easier for them because they can control and they can adjust and
Mm,
they don't have to mess all the accounts if they want to
yeah.
do one ad, one new creative.
And it gives them a better understanding of the fundamentals as well, because they actually understand what happens in order to get the result. So very much agreement with that. Let's just close off on this creative aspect with so what are some of the elements we talked about the scroll stopper or that initial kind of like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds that you have to really capture the attention. And I think like focusing on that in respect to your creatives, like you going and writing a 90-second, 2 minute script to give to a creator is probably a really poor use of your time. So in those first, like, say, 5 seconds of that piece of creative, assuming we're just like testing video content, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out there right now and I'm going to create a whole bunch of video assets that I can test in my ads. Like, what are some of the things that you would really focus on in terms of like I'm trying to create really compelling, interesting, fast moving, and captivating kind of content. Which things or which ingredients would you really like advise to push into that first 3 or 5 seconds?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm actually like in the, I'd say, school of people that's kind of saying, hey, we need to be like we need to go like bold claims, and we need to really like get
Mm.
kind of I would say the attention as fast as possible. So I would go with more aggressive ways to get
Hmm.
people to look at my video, and I would do anything like I would can I can't technically that Meta would allow, right? So there's no limit unless Meta would disapprove, right? So if I can get their attention, and I know that feels like, hey, it's like we're gonna be like dancing here just to get people in, but in
Yeah.
reality, you're like you're really getting the attention, and you're competing with people that are doing that. So if they're doing it, then you should do it by default in terms of competition. I'm not saying that you should dance, but I'm saying just saying that you need to do what is required, right? Whatever it is, what is required in terms of content and kind of appeal, you need to do that. Now, I focus mainly on in terms of e-commerce on before and after transformations, bold claims. So these are the strong, I would say, positioning.
Mm.
It's like you position for a business that does have a problem, a transformation. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna start here, and like you can start right away with the transformation. We guarantee
Mm.
the transformation, or we show it. If you're in e-commerce, not like a service-based business, so you're gonna start with showing them a before and after using
Yep.
your product technically, and you're gonna get their attention. So that's how you can kind of focus on it. Bold claims is kind of going, people are crazy about this and kind of starting with that angle, but it's really positioning, I would say, something that would get the attention using those kind of two, I would say, leverage
Mm.
transformation and bold claims.
Agreed. I think I absolutely agree with the transformation aspect. I think that's probably one of the most powerful kind of like use cases of really being able to, I know Eugene Schwartz was big on, and David Ogilvy as well, in terms of like the demonstration. Like it's like rather than telling them, show them. So it's like, how can I actually, which is a transformation, right? How can I show you what the product does? And so we do a few things with, for example, the Basu skin in terms of, before and afters when people use the cloth and the skin is transformed massively. And so we use a before and after kind of like ad content. And then we also use a lot of demonstration based content in terms of demonstrating what it looks like to have the makeup removed from your skin and seeing that at a close up level and all the makeup that's actually still remaining in the pores because it's so impactful. And people watch that and it's like, wow, I didn't realize that my skin actually looked like that. So yeah, I think the demonstration for me is such a massive, powerful kind of factor of being able to show people like this is what the actual product does. What's your thoughts on the copy in terms of like headlines, body copy, those types of things in respect to creative? We've talked a fair bit about video content and the creative aspect, but as far as the content goes, copy, headlines, important, not important, relevant, not relevant, less relevant.
So, okay, so if I was to, let's say, kind of a rank, so you have your marketing angle. That's the first thing. Marketing angle is kind of how what you're kind of talking about and the problem
Yep.
with the pain
Mhm.
point that you're tackling. And then you have the scroll stopper, which is actually just leveraging that first angle, but just kind of doing that bold claim transformation element. So it's kind of, I would say, position two. Position three, we start looking at the ad copy and headline. Four, the thumbnail. So this is kind of how I would rank things in terms of just like priority and impact. Now, hard copy is important, particularly, as I mentioned, it's not the last thing I would look at. It's kind of, I would say, just after the scroll stopper. Actually, sorry, I forgot about the call to action. I would put in marketing angle, scroll stopper, call to action, and then ad copy, headline, and thumbnail. So this is kind of the
Got
order.
it.
But
Got it.
otherwise, term of impact is impactful, but not as impactful as, let's say, the call to action, not as impactful as,
Mm.
let's say, the scroll stopper, not as impactful as the marketing angle. So I would still leverage those first, and then I'll look at the ad copy later in terms of just optimizing that. Most of the time, it is like an important element, but not strong enough to make it or break it kind of situation.
Right.
So even if you miss your ad copy, your ad would be fine if your scroll stopper is good. So if everything else is good, that you can literally have just one like line and or nothing, and then you have a good scroll stopper, it's still gonna work. So it's really about
Mm.
prioritizing, but I would say ad copy there is an impact. Like you should not ignore it because your competition is not, but it's not as strong as the scroll stopper and or the
Mm.
marketing angle and or the call to action. So that's my opinion
Agreed.
on it.
Yeah. I agree completely. Yeah. I think perhaps in the past the copy was a lot more relevant and it was probably a lot more kind of like necessary to focus on. I have seen also, for example, like long form copy paired with really strong kind of creative. it seems like it has a longer lifespan almost. It's as if like all of that kind of copy, it provides more kind of for the user experience in terms of they're reading all of that copy, they're consuming that copy, and the kind of the decision in the lifespan isn't so quick and just like look at the creative doesn't work anymore, burnt out, right? And then you're switching creatives all the time. So I personally I like a lot of kind of longer form content, not so much with like lower priced e-commerce products, but if you're working with higher priced products or higher based service products, definitely like longer form content is quite interesting. But I have seen correlation there between content, for example, that has like a one line, piece of copy that starts to fatigue a lot quicker than that same piece of content with a longer form copy that maybe tells a story, sells, has more of testimonials in it, has more of like the user experience, the demonstration, the testimonies infused into that copy. I think that can be quite transformational. And I think it also can extend the lifespan of like that one piece of creative. So I think ultimately like testing both, but I'm very much in the camp with you in terms of yes, absolutely. Like, let's make sure the creative's strong first as the main thing that's going to make the most impact. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's my view on it. Same thing. Really, Meta would also generate right now with Meta AI. They're going to do like, they're going to give you like a copy. Like, whenever you type in a little bit, they're going to generate some versions for you. So you can actually use that to look at like how you can structure. And most of the time, you can have that longer format just with Meta generating for you options. You can also use ChatGPT, obviously, right now. But that's still, I still will look at more the other elements that we talked about, the scroll stop and call to action and the marketing angle.
Great. Got it. Okay, excellent. So let's say, for example, right now we've spent a lot of time and we've like improved our cost of traffic, right? We're driving like efficient traffic
Congratulations.
somewhere, right? Somewhere within, and I'm almost thinking we make these individual almost complete episodes on each one of these topics because like each one of them are quite robust and quite detailed in terms of really workshopping this. So what would be how would I know that like I'm ready to move to the next phase here, right? I've spent all this time workshopping, I've tested heaps of creatives. I'm like, I feel pretty confident about what I've done. I'm starting to see more visits for either less cost or the same cost. And like things are looking good.
Okay, so if the CPC is going down, then first, great. So you kind of, control that element. Now we're going to look at the conversion, which is another thing. Like you might have an ad that's really doing well in terms of CPC, people would enjoy it. Doesn't mean really that's going to convert. So your goal would be looking at identifying the conversion of that creative, but also the conversion of your funnel. So we're looking at mainly, are we converting? And when I start looking at conversions, we're going to look at, are people adding to cart? Are they initiating checkout? So it's kind of, you look at those first, and then you look at the conversion, obviously. So it's going to be more you're going to move from the ad account and look more at your Shopify and see add to cart level, people adding to cart, because that's the price. That's how actually they're like accepting or not your price. If you're in an
Correct.
e-commerce store, them adding to cart means we're accepting. Like this is something like we're kind of signing. That's good. The price is okay. But them not adding to cart, they're saying no, I'm not agreeing on this price, right? So I'm more
Mm,
thinking of it like that. So the first thing I would look at, do we have some add to carts? For adding to cart, the price is kind of accepted depending on the level, because you might tell me like, hey, if I have add to cart after 1,000 spend, that's $1,000 for one add to cart. We have a problem, right? But if you
mm,
have, let's say, I would give kind of a like a kind of a like a like benchmark again. If you have an add to cart rate of 5% and above, then that means in general that the price is accepted. It's accepted. Like you're
mm.
not like pricing, I would say, something that's not like the audience is accepting that, I would say, offer overall. And that's when we come to kind of the offer probably in terms of just the view of it. But that's my view. What do you think about, let's say, that process? Do you look at the lots of cards and kind of define is the offer good,
Mm.
or you kind of look at a different metric?
No, I guess from a general sense, like assuming that you've got your traffic kind of like coming to the site and it's within KPI as far as like what that acceptable measurement looks like for you, your traffic costs are working. It's okay. The content's doing its job. Then the next obvious kind of thing is definitely like activating that next add to cart step and being like, and this is also making the big assumption that your website from a I guess like architectural like flow perspective makes sense. Like there's no like big red flags, you don't have like any issues with like your cart function, you don't have any like crazy additional like maybe prices that are that make people kind of like steer away from your site. And I think the one thing that I'll always like look to do, especially with newer brands when they're starting to initially get traffic and starting to initially grow their business, is a lot of them will like, for example, have their price and then they'll have, for example, like shipping above, or like free shipping above a very high threshold, for example, and they have all of these additional measurements within the funnel that makes it very difficult for people to even agree in the first place they want to buy. Similar to what you mentioned, it's like, all right, so the price is this, but you need to buy 3 of these units to get the free shipping or to get the free gift. And I don't even know yet if my product or my price is validated, if that makes sense. And so for me, I'm always just like, when I start initially, is like, how can I make it as simple and easy for that user to go through the whole experience and then just say yes to me, right? You don't need to say yes for 3 of them. You don't need to say yes to 6 of them plus free shipping. You just need to say yes to one at a
Yeah.
price point that's reasonable so we can start to get that flow through the system. So I think very much in agreement with the add to cart being the main function to optimize for. I think I'll usually look for an add to cart percentage of around about like 4.5 and above. So very similar to with the 5% objective. If you can be at that 5% level, things are looking quite good. And definitely in terms of the signal that you're actually looking for, it's that psychological agreement of like, the price makes sense. I'm willing to pay what you're asking for this, and then it's able to kind of move into the next stage of obviously optimizing that checkout conversion, but definitely
Yes.
aligned with what you're structuring there. Yeah,
Yes. And one thing just for any listener, like, hey, I'm having actually 5% add to cart. Keep in mind, I'm talking about also different prices. So your add to cart should be, if you're on a lower price, 10%, because most of the time, if you're running
correct.
at 5% add to cart, your conversion rate, just to let you know, your conversion rate would be probably around 1%, 1.25, because what would happen, and this is again something I think generally in the e-commerce space, you're going to see that you're going to lose 50% of people in every stage of the funnel. If you were in the
Correct.
add to cart and you have 10 people, you're going to lose 5 of them when you go to the checkout, and then you're going to lose 2.5 when you get to the conversion level. So if we start with 5, then we're going to end up probably with 1%, 1 to 1.25. And I'm looking more at things that are above $80 when I'm talking about this particular number. But if you're under $80, you should aim for 10% add to cart rate, which should give you about probably 2-3%. And that's the average, not even, I would say,
Mm,
a very high conversion rate. It's just you kind of getting that average, and we can optimize other things once you get there. So that's just kind of in that
mm,
element, particularly if someone is listening and like, hey, I'm having like a 5% add to cart and it's not working, but my price is like $50. I'm like, would
yeah.
be higher.
Perfect example is like the Basu business that we have, and like the price point on that I think is like 49 to 49 to $60, somewhere in that bracket there. And we
Yes.
generally see like our actual conversion rate to be up around like 7-8%. And then the
Yes.
add to cart rate can be as high as like 12, 13, 14%, simply because of the actual price point of that product. And so the very model of us, say, for example, I applied that same structure and said, oh, well, I'd be happy with 4.5% on that price point product. It would completely
Yes.
ruin the unit economics and it would blow the profit like completely in that whole business. So very much
Yes.
aligned with that. Yeah. And this is also
Yes.
making the assumption as well that all of our campaigns are set up for conversion. We're not running any
Yes.
weird objectives. We're not running any
Yes.
traffic campaigns or
No
add to
traffic
cart
campaign.
campaigns.
Yes. No.
None of
Yeah.
those
It's just
things.
running, just conversion. I actually been very aggressive on not doing anything but conversion event with Meta. If you're looking to get sales, don't optimize for traffic. Don't optimize for reach. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get
Mm,
sales. And Meta actually, they're actually pretty direct and honest in how they operate. If you look at
mm,
your like you create a new campaign and you look at the information they're telling you for each objective, they're not mentioning sales in let's say if you click on reach or you click on let's say traffic, they're telling you you're going to get traffic, but they're very
correct.
clear you're not going to get sales. If you click on sales, they're telling you, hey, you're going to get sales. If you look at leads, they're
Correct.
going to say like, hey, you're going to get sales here. Those, I would say just really in terms of how you look at it, Meta, they're telling you already why they're doing this. And a lot of businesses would think, hey, I just get a lot of traffic, they just optimize for traffic. No, they're telling you you're not going to get sales. And if you get sales, it's not going to be something that I would say more reliable because they're not optimizing for that. So they're not looking to get you that. So I would say really
Mm.
make sure to put in a purchase conversion event.
Mm. So I really want to unpack every detail, especially around this whole concept of, I guess, helping people to optimize that conversion rate. Because I feel like there are so many things that we would go into that in terms of like you're on the landing page, and people have just landed on your store, for example. What are the contributing factors to having an add to cart percentage that's within KPI, out of KPI? I feel like there's a lot of things. And I probably would almost want to spend the entirety of our next discussion really going through this and putting it into almost like an action plan for people listening. So, say for example, you're listening right now and you're like, "This has been really helpful with our advertising focused front end. We've taken some things away in terms of how to reduce the cost of traffic. Maybe by next time, you could almost come back and have a bunch of ads that you've tested, so you can listen and really implement stage by stage by stage this triangle that we are going through." But I feel like to really give people the best without rushing and without kind of like missing any things, us on the next episode will break down and go through in complete detail every step inside of increasing that conversion rate. What do you think, Hamen?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually very excited to really go through the whole funnel. And I know that
Correct.
a lot of guys, like a lot of people listening to is like, hey, I see it right now. I need to do more volumes just in terms of like the things we mentioned. You need to do more creatives. You saw the importance in terms of, let's say, marketing angles, scroll stopper, like everything we gave like the priority of kind of your focus, and you're getting better result. Then next time we're gonna help you make even more money. We're gonna help you
Correct.
optimize and get like more
Correct.
conversions. You can double your sales by doubling your conversion rate, which is pretty exciting. So I would really look at this as kind of the episode they're gonna take you from, let's say, break even if you're at that level to
Mm,
very much above target in your profit, just really creating something that pump money. The thing you mentioned,
correct.
you put in $1, you get five back. You put in $1, you get five back. That's what we
Correct.
want. And yeah, very excited for it.
Mm. And I think just to kind of like close out the point in terms of like increasing the profitability, I think the the goal, I guess, with the business that you're running should always be to be the most profitable with the least amount of money. Like that should always be the focus. And that should always be the focus with the motive or the agenda behind that, to not do it in a way that like delivers a crappy product, or do it in a way where you're like doing any form of like misleading, like low quality work or low quality product. You should always be looking at your business with like, okay, how can I serve the market an exceptional quality product for the least amount of money? And you have the most leverage. And when I think about this, I'm always like, the reason for that is because the more profit that you have in your business, the more you're able to withstand the volatility of business in general, right? Because like, say for example, you run a very, very lean business and you think to yourself like, it needs to be this lean because I have all these customers and I really need to deliver epic quality products. And you run on very, very, very low gross profit. Your net profit is even lower, if anything. And then you have a bad month or a bad quarter, like you're going to go out of business, and then you can't
Yes.
be in business in general. And so I think the idea sometimes with especially new founders is like, I need to be like sacrificial. I need to be almost like a charity. I need to make sure that I'm like delivering the best quality product. And that means I need to be very lean with my margins. And I think that's a noble way to think about it. But like, if the business ceases to exist because it can't actually pay itself because it doesn't have enough profit, you lose the game, you know? And so I think the agenda always should be like, how could I do the most with the least? And I really want to workshop on this with you over the next coming sessions, because I think this is a very, very, very powerful subject and very valuable content that I think people can get so much from and action and implement. Because when you're able to have a much more profitable business, you sleep better at night, um, you make better
No
decisions,
stress.
right? Your stress levels go down. You can employ and bring great people into your company that can help you to grow. And then you can really start to get the results that you want in much quicker time frames. So super exciting stuff. I think we're unpacking at the moment, Hammond. Very, very pumped for what we're going to do over the next couple of sessions here as we break this down and go into a lot more detail. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, very, very excited for this, particularly because we talked about this a lot of times. We're very obsessive on like within, I would say, ecom capital in terms of getting that profit and really optimizing things. So that's going to be exciting. Now, the focus would be the same. Like if you can grow your business and kind of build that momentum, I'm very much like aligned on that. You're going to be really scalable, and you need to think about the bad month, the bad week, the bad day,
Correct.
that period, and
Correct.
really get ready for that. And your goal is to stay in business, is not to just do something where like, hey, we're just going to make a little bit of money and then we're going to take it out, and that's done. That's the end of the story. It's really low return, low ROI, and you're not doing anything technically. I'd rather
Yeah.
just keep my job. If I don't want to build something big, you can kind of build it and have that momentum and kind of growth. So it's really, that's something I would say a very important topic, particularly growing with low cost and really getting
Mm.
more profit.
Very, very excited. Super pumped about what we're going to cover over the next couple episodes. As always, for all our listeners, if you have questions or things that you'd like to maybe have us discuss or go deeper into, you can feel free to leave the podcast a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening to it on. And also, if you do have any questions or things that you'd like us to discuss and cover, feel free to drop an email to support@ecomcapital.com, and we can unpack some of the questions and things on the next episode. Hammond, always a pleasure, my friend. Look forward to unpacking the next session with you and diving into how we can really increase our overall conversion rates on pages. Thank you so much.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.